Today we have the latest trade talk on teams like the Boston Bruins, Washington Capitals, Pittsburgh Penguins, Winnipeg Jets, and the New York Islanders. We have a couple signings and an update on the NHL going to the Olympics. All that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As you can see, we're still on location here in beautiful Digby, Nova Scotia, overlooking the Bay of Fundy. Much nicer day today than yesterday. At least we've got some sun here in the background. Got some nice view of the water. I'm going to certainly be taking in some beach time today and trying to relax. But before we do that, we want to get some content made here for the channel and make sure everybody's up to date in the latest news. Now, when it comes to the Olympics, there's a fairly substantial update I've seen saying that the NHL and the IOC are having difficulty coming to terms on the media rights. Obviously, that's quite important to the NHL. If their players are going to be playing, they want to be able to access the media stuff to repurpose it later for different promotions or other types of things that they want to do with it. And obviously, one stumbling point is that their former broadcast partner in the U.S., NBC, is going to be broadcasting the Olympics in the States, and they don't work with NBC anymore. So that's part of the issue. I'm not sure exactly what they have to do to overcome this, but ultimately it's a stumbling block. It seems like they have okay on the insurance side of things that'll cover COVID and that type of thing. So I think that stumbling block's been overcome, but when you overcome one, another one pops up. So certainly not a great sign, but we'll see. I know the NHL is still very much committed to going, and hopefully the IOC can make the NHL happy. Really, it's only right if their players are going to be there that they have access to some media rights, and obviously when it boils down to money and everything, and money talks. So we'll see what they can get figured out. Now, another couple signings. The Canes have signed a couple vets. They've brought in Stefan Nason on a 1-year, 2-way deal, and they also signed Derek Stepan to a 1-year contract at 1.35. So an extra veteran depth center iceman there. He played in Ottawa last year. I can't remember how many games he played, but it was fairly early in the year. I think he might have played 20 games or so, and then he ended up with a fairly significant knee injury. So at his age and stage of his career, that is going to be problematic. He was already noticeably much slower at that stage of his career than previous years. So I wonder how that's going to impact him. But as time went on, he was getting better, getting adjusted to Ottawa, getting adjusted to his new line mates, teammates, etc., and was starting to finally play a little bit better when the injury took place. So we'll see how he does in Carolina. If he gets a small enough role with lower ice time, that could be an issue. But obviously, the Canes have a lot of former Rangers now, so we'll see how they make out with that front, which used to be the MO for the Lightning. Now it seems to be the Carolina Hurricanes thing to do. When it comes to the Avalanche, they've signed Ryan Murray as well. Ryan Murray gets a short-term deal with the Avs. Certainly an interesting signing. Obviously, that kind of rounds out their decor and kind of makes them tapped out when it cap-wise. But when you think about guys like Gerard, Bakar, Taves, Johnson, McDermott, Murray now, Bowen, Byram, I think they've kind of rebuilt that blue line. They moved out Ryan Graves so they didn't lose him at the expansion draft, which was probably something they didn't want to do. But they've still kind of replaced that muscle, hopefully getting Johnson back and throwing McDermott in there. And Murray's got decent size, not really known as much for the physical stuff as McDermott is, but still a lot of experience back there. Former number 2 overall pick, will land in Colorado on a 1-year deal. So certainly an interesting pickup, not one we kind of expected that way. Now, when it comes to the Bruins and the other teams we're going to talk about here today, most of the information comes from the same sources we talked about yesterday with the latest 31 Thoughts podcast from Friedman and Merrick on the podcast. Likely their last one of the season to kind of go over all 32 teams and what they expect for the rest of the way through the offseason from these teams. So, of course, we didn't cover it all yesterday. It's just too much. But I want to talk about Boston here. I mean, Boston is a team that is very likely going to be exploring the center market here. Obviously, they got David Krejci not coming back now. It's devastating news. Been a very consistent piece for them. You've got Patrice Bergeron, got 1 year left on his deal, getting older, still playing very well, mind you, but still, they have to look to the future. They have guys like Jack Studnicka, but they've been hesitant to put him in a prominent role. You've got guys like Hala and Foligno that they signed. So clearly guys who could play, but they're more of the number 3. Same with Charlie Coyle. Like, they're not all capable of playing number 2 center roles, in my opinion. Now, Boston could go into the season, since they technically have enough players, and they could try to make the best of it and add as they go as the season goes along. But will any of them have chemistry with Taylor Hall is another big question. So obviously the center spot is big for them. Friedman really thinks that the next big move we see at Boston will be for a top center, that they're scouring the center market, trying to figure out what they should do. Now, they've been rumored to be in on Eichel, and I can see him being a major solution to their issue there, but will they be able to get that done? I think out of all the teams that are in on Eichel, to me, he is going to be tough to land. We know that. The Sabres are not really reneging here on their price so far, and the Bruins, I'm not sure, have the assets compared to some teams to make it happen. They'd really be setting themselves better, but at the same time setting themselves back. Like, you'd have to include probably some younger players like Stadnyka, Vakanainen, and maybe Beecher, first round pick, second round pick. You know, it's all things that they would prefer to have. So it does make a lot of sense that center position would be something they would target and try to aim for the future. But outside of Eichel, who do they target is the question. I mean, there are a couple of names out there that they could be looking to, but would they be the best fit? Maybe a guy like Sean Monahan in Calgary, Christian Dvorak in Arizona. I think Dvorak actually would be the better of the two when it comes to the style of play. But there's no real clear connection right now to Boston and any other centers besides Eichel. I just really have concerns and doubts that they'd be able to pull it off. But you never know. As time goes on, teams are going to fall in and out of the race for him. The price is going to change. Like, there's going to be a lot of factors, and you just never know who's going to swoop in. It very well could be a surprise to all of us where he ends up. But Boston definitely looking to the center market for sure. Now, when it comes to other teams like Winnipeg, a defenseman that's likely going to find himself on the move and not going to get the opportunity he's looking for in Winnipeg is Sami Niku. Another guy was Tucker Pullman, who obviously left and got a fairly big contract from Vancouver. There was no way Winnipeg was giving him that. But Winnipeg has kind of rebuilt their blue line. I do wonder, like, some of their other younger guys, like Heinola and Sandberg, like, how much of a role are they going to get even? So the older prospects, like Pullman and Niku, that have been around longer, if they haven't gotten their opportunity by now with the other guys they brought in, that's why they were brought in. It's because they're not, you know, confident enough that they're going to get the job done or the style of defenseman that they want. So Sami Niku, definitely a player. I mean, he's a former, I believe he won like AHL Defenseman of the Year. Like, he's a pretty prolific guy at that level, but he hasn't been able to consistently show that offensive flair at the NHL level, so that's a big question mark if we can bring that. But the Jets have kind of rebuilt everything and get some other prospects that are ranking ahead of them, so we'll see where they go. I'm not sure where he could end up, but there's certainly been quite a market for D-men this offseason. So now, another defenseman to watch as well is Marcus Pettersson in Pittsburgh. He's another guy that they'd like to move for cap purposes. I'm still surprised they haven't addressed their goaltending situation, but I know Friedman mentions that Pettersson's a guy that's generated a fair bit of interest around the league. The main issue is they don't like his salary, so the AAV on him is a little bit high, which is causing some issues. So we'll see if Pittsburgh can find a home for Pettersson. It's not so much that they don't like his game per se, it's just they need the cap relief, and the way they've structured their blue line there, that just he's kind of fallen out of favor. I know when he first arrived from Anaheim, Jim Rutherford was a big fan, wanted to get him under contract long term, which they ended up doing, but sometimes those don't work out and become problematic, so we'll have to see what Pittsburgh does. But there's plenty of team. Like I said, the defense market's been crazy this offseason, so I think they will be able to get something figured out. But I know a team like Seattle, who's got more than enough capable defensemen, is also kind of holding up some of the D trades too, because I think a lot of teams are waiting to see what they do, because they don't have to keep all those players, and they haven't really done a whole lot yet outside of trading Brett Ritchie. So at some point they have to shed some bodies. It's just a matter of when they decide to do that, and kind of opens things up here a little. Now, of course, we also have an update on the very secretive New York Islanders of Lou Lamoriello. Now, of course, one thing that we've seen and Friedman's talked about is that he appears to be working on a substantial trade. They want to acquire another big-time forward, another scorer to play in the top six. But there is word out there that Josh Bailey could be the piece they use to make that acquisition. Now, that's something I've seen from a few different sources, and shouldn't be too surprised, as much as many feel that Bailey is a big part of the team's identity and obviously a huge part of the past. He's a guy that they exposed in the expansion draft, and I do wonder if they want somebody a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more prolific. Not to say he's not a good player, because he's been clutch for them. He's been consistent. I'm not sure that I would favor a Bailey trade, but it really depends on who they bring in. And I know a lot of people have discounted the possibility of Johnny Gaudreau being moved at this point, and it is possible Flames could extend him. But even though he now has a modified no trade clause, the teams that he likely wouldn't block, I would think, just my guess, would be in that New York, Philly area. So like Rangers, Islanders, Devils, Flyers, those are probably the teams, if he had to go to, that he would prefer to, because it would be closer to home for him, as much as he said all the right things about staying in Calgary. And I'm not going to say that he's lying about that. I think some people, I know like Eric Francis of Sportsnet, has been for a long time, that he won't stay. And well, I guess we'll find out shortly, because he's entering the final year of his deal. Do the Flames extend him? Because they certainly need a shake up there, and they've been quiet too. So obviously, like teams that like the Islanders and the Flames, without much talk, you kind of have to wonder, could they be talking together, which is why things are on the down low. Even though we don't have any rumors from insiders suggesting these two teams are talking, personally, like for me, I kind of peg Tarasenko and Gaudreau as the main two targets that Lou's likely targeting for trade. So we'll see what happens. I mean, there are other players out there, but we know that the Islanders proved that look at how they did in the playoffs. They gave the Tampa Bay Lightning the best go out of all their opponents, and they basically were one goal away from beating the Cup champions, which means they likely would have won the Stanley Cup. So to me, the Islanders are super close. They just need that one extra thing to put them over the top, and to me, it's an extra offensive punch. They have extremely good D, solid goaltending, and I really do think with that they could be a Cup contender. So we'll find out what lives up to eventually, but with all those secretive contracts, everything, nothing being disclosed, something's going on, and I wouldn't overlook the possibility of them and the Flames hooking up. Now, lastly, I want to talk about Jack Eichel. Now, Friedman talks about this in the podcast too, with the latest, obviously, pushback from Eichel's agent, and he kind of wonders, if the Sabres are probably going to dig in and maybe even feel like they're not going to be bullied into making a trade here. And I do wonder if, as much as it was, different to see their perspective and hear their perspective, and wonder if it would put pressure on Buffalo. At the same time, it could make matters worse. And if Adams and the Sabres decide they're really digging in and not going to succumb to the pressure. So it certainly is going to be very interesting to be seen here what the Sabres do on Eichel, because there's certainly lots of information out there now about the surgery. I think both sides are kind of digging in their ground here. We heard lots of teams are kind of looking into this themselves, and I've heard speculation at least that some of the other teams that have been rumored to be interested in him are okay with the surgery. So I think the agents for Eichel is likely going to use that as well for leverage to say, like, listen, this team's going to let him get his surgery, move on with his life. Can you just get a deal done? And obviously understand it's a mega, important thing for them. This is, a franchise piece that they got number 2 overall. They can't take this lightly. They can't screw this up. If they do, it's going to set them back even further. So you certainly understand the magnitude of it and why they're taking their time and being cautious. I just hope that the war of words doesn't get too public and doesn't end up causing things to go even slower. So that's all your updates for today. Let me know your thoughts and opinions, everything down below in the comments, and we'll discuss further. Again, welcome here to Digby, Nova Scotia. I hope you enjoyed the scenery. There'll be more videos coming from the road as I'll be away for the rest of the week. So certainly trying to get rested up and relaxed for the upcoming NHL season, and I hope you are as well. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.